If you've ever thought about grabbing a Displate, then there's never ever been a better time than right now. They're running a flash sale just for viewers of this channel, and it only runs for 24 hours after this video goes live, and it's a flat 40% discount site-wide, though some exclusions do apply. This sale is Displate saying thank you for your support. They've done 3 shoutouts on the channel over the last few months, and the response has always been overwhelming. It's no surprise, since Displates are a fantastic way to decorate a space, celebrate something you love, and they also make for perfect gifts. If you haven't heard of them before, they're essentially posters that are better, cooler, more convenient, and more durable than regular posters because they are made of metal. They're super easy to install, and you don't have to worry about damaging your walls with nails or hooks or whatever. Just attach the magnetic pad over the protective sheet, press firmly for 5 seconds, and boom, you are ready to hang your Displate. It never takes long to find your perfect Displate because there are over 2 million original and licensed designs to choose from. Personally, I'm a big fan of the recently launched Destiny 2 collection featuring vistas from some of the game's most iconic raids, but I also recently got some Back to the Future ones. And the great thing about Displates is that you can just swap them in and out in seconds depending on your mood. All Displates are manufactured in the EU, but no matter where you are in the world, they'll arrive in only 4 or 5 days, making them the perfect last minute gift option or just a chance to spoil yourself. Displates are never ever discounted this much, so if you want to grab that 40% discount, then be sure to jump in within the first 24 hours of this video being live. Just click the link below and use offer code SKILLUP40 at checkout. Offer not valid on limited edition or Lumino products, but everything else is fair game. Just use offer code SKILLUP40 at checkout after clicking the link below. Thanks Displate for sponsoring the video. Gamers, what's happening? Hope you're having a fantastic week, or at the very least, I hope you're having a better week than Xbox. Another week, another round of bad headlines for Xbox. I know, I'm as sick of talking about it as you guys are hearing about it, but Xbox's mad flailing about is unquestionably news, and since this is a news show, we're obliged to cover it. Where to begin this week? Oh boy, alright, well let's start with what Xbox is best known for at this point. Layoffs. Sorry, I meant price hikes. I knew it was one of those two. This week, Xbox made a subtle behind-the-scenes change that we're unlikely to notice, but indie developers might. The price of Xbox dev kits increased from $1,500 to $2,000. As reported by The Verge, the bump came with a little explainer from Microsoft to developers that reads, quote, "The adjustment reflects macroeconomic developments. We remain committed to providing high-quality tools and support for your development efforts," end quote. I know this seems like a small thing in the big scheme of things, and maybe it is, but I'm also reminded of how Xbox got its start all those years ago. Back then, the PlayStation was a nightmare to develop for, and Microsoft assembled a team of people whose job it was to make Xbox console development so easy that developers would be pleading with their bosses to let them make games for Xbox. The strategy worked, and while some great exclusives and strong marketing were the biggest factors in Xbox's success, a strong commitment to ease of development was the behind-the-scenes source that was greasing the wheels. That was back in the early 2000s when Microsoft was worth around $300 billion. Now it's worth $4 trillion, but I guess that's not enough. Line must go up, and I guess that extra $500 is gonna make all the difference? If it seems a little desperate, then perhaps overnight reporting from Jason Schreier will help put things in context. According to him, Microsoft is pushing for a 30% profit margin in the Xbox business, a directive that came down after Microsoft CFO Amy Hood arrived back in 2023. You might remember this as the moment when we started hearing whispers about Xbox going multi-platform, followed by that awkward business update where Phil Spencer was trying to convince us that Xbox was only half pregnant and that they still really valued exclusives even though they wouldn't rule out making everything exclusive at some point. Anyway, this 30% thing explains a lot. If it sounds like a high number, it isn't. It's exceptionally high, as S&P Global Market Intelligence say that the average profit margin for a video games business is around 17 to 22%, and Xbox has historically sat between 10 and 20%. So imagine if your boss comes up to you and says, "Hey, raise profits by 10% or else," while your console business is dying and Game Pass growth is flat. At that point, I guess there are no bad ideas, including how about we raise the price of the dev kits? Seriously though, the true impact of this 30% target is no laughing matter. Mass layoffs, cancelled projects, a complete upending of Xbox's strategy. Xbox has been undergoing a rapid transformation these past 2 years, and these lofty profit margins appear to be a central piece of the puzzle, in addition to things like the Activision Blizzard purchase and Xbox's declining hardware business. Speaking of hardware, Xbox has got a big surprise in store for us next gen, and you won't believe what it is. Another price hike, let's go! Honestly can't believe this, but here it is this week. Sarah Bond is doing a press round to promote the newly released Xbox Ally X to the R to the OG, a device that's been getting mixed reviews in the sense that it performs well, but the software experience isn't great, and the price tag makes this extremely niche. You might call it highly premium, very high-end, very curated. We'll come back to those words very soon. This past week, there was speculation that Xbox might exit the hardware category entirely, but in an interview with Variety, she quashed those rumors. Quote, "We are 100% looking at making things in the future. We have our next-gen hardware in development. We've been looking at prototyping, designing. We have a partnership we've announced with AMD around it, so that is coming, end quote. And that's all true and it's been known for a while, but I have long suspected that the next-gen Xbox is not going to be a mass-produced device that gets huge shelf space in Best Buy or whatever. It'll be a niche, almost direct-to-consumer device produced in much more limited quantities. It won't be the intended way to play Xbox games. Rather, it'll just be an option, and it'll be targeting a more narrow, high-end consumer the same way that Microsoft's Surface devices do. And wouldn't you know it, I think Sarah Bond is warming us up for exactly that, because this week in an interview with Mashable, here's what she said, quote, "I can tell you that the next-gen Xbox is going to be a very premium, very high-end, curated experience. You're starting to see some of that thinking we have in this handheld, but I don't want to give it all away," end quote. Very premium, very high-end, curated. 3 words that all functionally mean the same thing at checkout. $, $, $. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise though. Recall that the console business model is predicated on selling consoles either at or below cost to win market share and then making your money back on royalties. Microsoft is out of the royalties collecting business since they aren't trying to sell their games on their platform alone. They're in the box sales and in-game spending business now, and having a hardware install base doesn't align with that, so why would they subsidize their hardware and why would they produce it at scale? And like, who would buy it? Like seriously, would you buy it? Are you gonna tell your mate to buy it? Like what's the value proposition here? If Microsoft wants to sell me a pre-made PC with an Xbox logo on it, I think they're gonna find that the PC hardware market really doesn't need Microsoft's help, a challenge that Valve encountered firsthand with their Steambox project some years ago. See, when it comes to video game consoles, it's still exclusives, man. That's what keeps Nintendo afloat and thriving. That's what keeps Sony afloat and thriving. But another thing that Sarah Bond said in that interview with Mashable is that exclusives are antiquated. Quote, "We're really seeing people evolve way past that. Like the biggest games in the world are available everywhere. You look at Call of Duty, you look at Minecraft, you look at Fortnite, you look at Roblox. That's exactly what's really driving community in gaming. That's where people gather. They have experiences, and the idea of locking it to one store or one device is antiquated for most people," end quote. Interesting perspective. Counterpoint, the Switch just sold 150 million units because of its exclusives, and Sony won the last 2 console generations because of their exclusives. Hell, I have an HBO Max subscription because it's the only way I can legally watch The Sopranos whenever I want, and I'm on my like 12th rewatch now. Saying that exclusives are antiquated is just a ridiculous thing to say. It's fine to say that Xbox has a different strategy. It's fine to say that Xbox has different strengths that it's looking to leverage, like cloud or its developer stable or whatever. Don't come out and say that exclusives are antiquated when exclusives are literally the reason that Xbox is in the 3rd place position that it's in. Ridiculous. Turning to some Sony news now, and you might recall that since July of this year, Sony has been locked in a copyright battle against Tencent, claiming that their upcoming game Light of Moderum was straight up copying Horizon Zero Dawn in its characters, enemies, and gameplay. Tencent recently attempted to dismiss the lawsuit, accusing Sony of making vague allegations, saying that it, quote, "merely employs the same time-honored tropes embraced by scores of other games released both before and after Horizon," end quote. Obviously, that's quite a stretch, and Sony feels that way too. They've now clapped back in response, saying their defense is, quote, "nonsense, the damage is done and it continues. Sony Interactive Entertainment has already suffered injury by Tencent promoting its knockoff game. The court can redress past ongoing and imminent infringement," end quote. Sony also then pointed out that it isn't just them who feels this way, quote, "the public expressed confusion and outrage upon discovering Light of Moderum for the knockoff that it is," end quote. Sony's lawyers, clearly regular viewers of This Week in Video Games, big shout out to them. Thanks for tuning in. Outside of their flimsy rebuttals, one of the other ways in which Tencent has been so difficult to deal with is that they've been attempting to cast the blame elsewhere. Sony filed its original lawsuit against Tencent America and Tencent Holdings, but the tech conglomerate claims that actually it's not their fault that Light of Moderum looks the way it does. It's technically being developed by one of their subsidiaries, Polaris Quest. Sony caught onto their tricksy ways though and has since called them out for playing a, quote, "shell game with its brands and entities," end quote. They also go on to highlight that Tencent themselves have had no issues with labeling Light of Moderum as a Tencent product, quote, "Tencent Holdings reports all of its revenue and debt from games on its annual report without attribution to any subsidiary, and it uses the name Tencent to advertise its games like Light of Moderum without distinguishing between subsidiaries," end quote. So yeah, this does appear to be a pretty clear-cut case, but you never know how these things actually go as they move through the legal process. Tencent have a pretty tricky position to defend here. Anyone with eyes can see that Light of Moderum is very intentionally camping the Horizon Zero Dawn IP in almost every aspect, and I'm honestly kind of impressed that they have the cojones to even contest this one. Makes for some good legal drama, I guess. Have you guys seen that new game from Quantic Dream? In case you're out of the loop, these are the guys that specialize in single-player choice-based narrative games such as Heavy Rain and the highly regarded Detroit Become Human. This team have honed their craft, they've really made a name for themselves in delivering these sorts of experiences, so it's only natural that their next game is a PvP MOBA thing. This is Spellcaster Chronicles. Stop me if you've heard this before, but it's a third-person 3v3 competitive multiplayer game in which you pick from a cast of heroes and try to push your little creeps down a lane while your opponent does the same. Very much reminiscent of games like Smite, Gigantic, or Valve's Deadlock. The shtick here is that the heroes are all mages, so they can fly around and attack from any direction. And yeah, it looks pretty good if you're into this sort of art style, but yeah, I don't know, man. The studio's very own David Cage came out with a very PR speak response following the announcement. Quote, "This new title may surprise our fans as it is very different from what we've done so far, but taking risks, challenging ourselves, exploring new ways of playing and telling stories, and attempting what seems impossible has always been part of our DNA. We also know how demanding it is to create something new. Earning the trust of players, standing out in such a competitive space, and introducing fresh concepts is incredibly challenging. And since we have no legacy in this genre, we know we have everything to prove, which is why your support and feedback will be essential. Together, we believe we can create something truly unique," end quote. That's not to say they fully shifted away from narrative-led experiences, as they do of course have Star Wars Eclipse in the works, which Cage assures us is definitely still a thing. Quote, "Of course, development of Star Wars Eclipse continues and we are eager to share more with you in the future," end quote. They continue to be very vague about this project and haven't said or shown anything substantial since it was revealed back in 2021. It's all just very strange given games like this aren't really in Quantic Dreams' wheelhouse. In fact, I'd argue their stuff leans in the entire opposite direction, so what's the deal? Well, I guess it begins to make a little more sense when you consider the fact that Quantic Dream are actually owned by NetEase. NetEase acquired them back in 2022 to act as their first European studio, and if you know NetEase, you'd know they love a good live service. To play devil's advocate, they're actually not doing too bad a job on this front between the likes of Marvel Rivals, Fragpunk, and Destiny Rising, all perfectly fine games. But let's be real, a studio like Quantic Dream moving into this space feels like a very ill fit. There are more than enough of these kind of games already, and frankly, not enough of the kind of games that Quantic Dream is known for. Don't get me wrong, I wish them the best with this thing, and maybe it'll find some audience, but it won't be their existing fans, I can tell you that much. So I hope for their sake that Star Wars Eclipse is still coming, and I hope that Spellcaster Chronicles has the secret sauce that many other ambitious live service projects don't. Speaking of multiplayer games that nobody really asked for, you guys remember Project Ethos? If you don't, I don't blame you. It was that weird PvP shooter that was giving Fortnite at home energy. Well, surprisingly, this isn't a cancellation report. On the contrary, 2K have just appointed a new head for the project, former Apex Legends executive producer Ben Brinkman. 2K president David Ismail had this to say, quote, "I'm excited to welcome Ben Brinkman as the new studio head at 31st Union. Ben's leadership and experience in the PvP shooter space is extensive, having spent the last 15 years developing and leading some of the most recognizable franchises in gaming, including Call of Duty Black Ops and most recently Apex Legends," end quote. Brinkman replaces 31st Union founder Michael Condrey, who left the studio in February of this year. Not sure how much of a dent this new leadership is really going to make, to be honest. Project Ethos was announced in October of last year and had a community playtest that was met with, well, crickets really. Interestingly, 2K's president had this to say in response to the playtest, quote, "The community feedback from last fall's Project Ethos playtest was enlightening. It affirmed the promise of a roguelike shooter, but told us we still had work to do. It uncovered the need for more distinct identity. It's been inspiring to see how far you've come. You took the feedback to heart and reimagined Project Ethos with a renewed vision, one that's poised to deliver on its promise to our players," end quote. And yeah, to be clear, this was not a battle royale, it was a third-person extraction hero shooter with roguelike stuff going on. Curious to see if it's still the same sort of thing in the future or something completely different. Either way though, you just never know how these sorts of things will land, since game quality doesn't always mean success. A lesson that Dreamhaven learned the hard way when they released the truly excellent but very underperforming Wildgate, or that Theorycraft Games learned when they released the excellent but underperforming Supervive, or that Sony learned when they released the excellent Concord. Wait, what? How did that sneak in there? A quick line around to finish off, starting with a follow-up to last week's story in which Assassin's Creed franchise lead Mark Alexis Cote left Ubisoft after 20 years with the company. His departure was seemingly connected to the creation of Tencent-backed subsidiary Vantage Studios that would handle the Assassin's Creed franchise from here on out, with Ubisoft stating that Cote had, quote, "chosen to pursue a new path elsewhere outside of Ubisoft," end quote. Well, it turns out that isn't exactly the case, as Cote clarified this week that he did not leave his position voluntarily. In a LinkedIn post, he said, quote, "Many of you have expressed surprise that I would choose to leave Assassin's Creed after so many years, especially given the passion I still hold for it. The truth is simple. I did not make that choice. I also owe it to my teams past and present to say this plainly. I did not walk away. I stayed at my post until Ubisoft asked me to step aside. Ubisoft decided to transfer the leadership of the Assassin's Creed franchise to someone closer to its new organizational structure. A different position was mentioned, but it did not carry the same scope, mandate, or continuity with the work I'd been entrusted with in recent years. I want to be clear that I hold no resentment. Ubisoft has been my home all my professional life, and I will always be grateful grateful for the people, the projects, and the belief that together we could create worlds that inspire millions, end quote. Something tells me this story is far from over. Former Call of Duty boss Glenn Schofield hasn't got many nice things to say about the recent crop of Call of Duty games. In an interview with Videogames Chronicle, he spoke about his thoughts on the franchise after Microsoft's acquisition, and he did not hold back. Quote, "I worry about it immensely, I really do. What's happening to Gears of War? Where's Halo? You know what I mean? Unfortunately, once you're assimilated by one of these companies, I think you take on some of their traits. I would imagine that the Call of Duty bonus system is out, and now you have theirs, and people are going to go, that isn't it. I'll give you one selfish example. I hate doing this, but since I left Sledgehammer, none of the games have been very good. As a matter of fact, Modern Warfare 3 back in 2011 was the last Call of Duty game to win Action Game of the Year, and my other two games were nominated for it. But now, you know, you just don't see them," end quote. Clearly stroking his own ego there a little bit, but man has a point. If you were on Twitter this past week, you might have seen reports that Nintendo's servers got hacked by a group known as the Crimson Collective. Pokemon-ass villain name if ever I heard one. Thankfully, it turns out that it wasn't true. Nintendo responded stating that no personal, development, or business information was leaked. You might recall that there was also a Pokemon leak recently revealing details about future titles. Unsurprisingly, Nintendo has remained tight-lipped about that one. The Crew 2 now has an offline mode. They announced this a year ago in response to the Stop Killing Games movement, which was born out of the shutdown of the Crew 1 on March 31st last year, and now here it is. Ubisoft said it, quote, "represents a major milestone in our ongoing commitment to ensuring long-term access to the Crew for all players," end quote. See, all it took was a public pressure campaign and like 2 million signatures. Easy. Big news for you Europeans. Football Manager just signed a multi-year partnership with FIFA. According to a post on their website, official FIFA events will now come to the spreadsheet football management game. I don't exactly know what this means, but I'm sure that FIFA got paid a lot of money for this, whatever it is, and that's just for the bribes. I'm joking, of course, I'm joking. Unless. Some sales milestones now. Escape from Duckov, the PvE-only Tarkov parody game, has now sold 1 million copies in just 4 days, while hitting a peak concurrent player count on Steam of over 182,000 players. Seems especially popular in China, given that 60% of its 7,500 reviews are in simplified Chinese. Not surprising, given it's a Chinese-developed game. Between the likes of Megabonk and Cloverpit, seems to be a big month for viral indie games. Speaking of which, ball shooter roguelite Ball X Pit has gone on to sell 300,000 copies in 5 days. The game has absolutely taken over my feeds as of late, and I can attest to its greatness, as I jumped in recently and I lost like 3 days of my life, man. It was crazy. It's a complete blackout. Definitely check this one out if you haven't already, as long as you don't mind having your productivity completely destroyed. Really is the season for roguelites, it seems, as Absolem has sold 200,000 copies in 1 week, an impressive result indeed. Capping things off with a non-indie though, Silent Hill 2 has now sold through 2.5 million copies according to a video released by Konami. Great to see it getting the kind of recognition it deserves. Very much looking forward to seeing what Bloober Team will do with the Silent Hill 1 remake currently in development. Closing out this block with some union news now. Basically all of Blizzard is unionized at this point. Joining Blizzard's Overwatch, WoW, Diablo, and Story Plus franchise unions are almost 400 workers at Blizzard's platform and technology department, alongside over 100 Hearthstone and Warcraft Rumble workers joining the Communications Workers of America. The CWA have also penned a statement with the United Video Games Workers criticizing EA's acquisition by the Saudis. The union says the acquisition will, quote, further concentrate power and wealth into the hands of a few gatekeepers while doing nothing to address the concerns of players and workers. EA's success has been entirely driven by tens of thousands of EA workers whose creativity, skill, and innovation made EA worth buying in the first place. Yet we, the very people who will be jeopardized as a result of this deal, were not represented at all when this buyout was negotiated or discussed. We are particularly worried about the future of our studios that are arbitrarily deemed as less profitable, but whose contributions to the video game industry define EA's reputation. This deal will result in EA having to finance nearly $20 billion in debt. Who will be spared? Which corners will executives cut? And what studios will be sacrificed in order for that to happen, end quote. Hey, if it's cost cutting you're wondering about, maybe ask Xbox. They know a thing or two about that. Sort of free stuff time now, and this week on the Epic Games Store, they're giving away Fear the Spotlight to commemorate Halloween coming up. This one is a retro survival horror game where you play two teens trapped in a school after they perform a seance gone wrong, and it's the first game released by indie horror movie outfit Blumhouse. Came out this time last year actually, and it got a really good reception from the few people who played it, so do give it a look. Hey, are you enjoying the show? If you are, you might be interested in our website, thisweekinvideogames.com. We've got daily news coverage over there, so you won't need to wait a whole week to hear what's happening, plus some stuff that doesn't make its way to the channel, like a preview of Guild Wars 2's next expansion, Visions of Eternity, and an impassioned defense of Tales of the Shire. Not to mention a column from Among Us community manager Victoria Tran, revealing the origin story behind some of the most successful recently released indie titles. This is the last month the special Founders Edition memberships will be available, and after that, they are gone forever. So head over to thisweekinvideogames.com to sign up either for free or as a founding supporter. That's thisweekinvideogames.com, Now back to the video. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, remember how Yuka Replayly came out a couple of weeks ago now and reimagined the original game 8 years after it launched? That remaster cycle isn't really so fast by modern standards, and Sony standards in particular, but how about 8 weeks? So in August of this year, a new AA studio out of Iceland released a God of War inspired cinematic action game set in Iceland called Echoes of the End. And while it looked really nice in trailers, it turns out it didn't play so great, so much so that the studio Mercury Games said they had completely overhauled the title to address all the feedback and criticism they got, and are relaunching the game as Echoes of the End Enhanced Edition this week on PC, Xbox, and PS5. I'm sure that Naughty Dog are looking at that 8-week remaster turnaround and thinking to themselves, we can top that. One announcement that snuck by us last week was a new game in the Dissidia Final Fantasy series, which is kind of like their crossover arena fighting spin-off. Unfortunately, Square Enix announced that the next one is a free-to-play mobile game, which is launching sometime in 2026. A shame, because the weird twist with this one is that it's actually set in modern-day Japan, with all of your favorite Final Fantasy protagonists rocking modern fashion, which is kind of silly, but also looks extremely cool. One notable delay from the past week is Witchbrook, magical-themed life simulator from Chucklefish and Robotality. These guys are known for very polished 2D games like the Advance Wars like Wargroove and tactics game Pathway, and Chucklefish are of course the original publishers of Stardew Valley, so some anticipation behind this one. Sadly, this one has been pushed back into 2026, so you'll just have to play one of the hundreds of other cozy life sims in the meantime. I hear Tales of the Shire, it's actually pretty good. So what came out last week? Well, it was a stacked one, very much like the week ahead of us, so excuse us if we try to breeze through a few of these as quickly as possible so you can get back to your day. We'll start off with Pokemon Legends ZA, which I appreciated during the preview cycle for incrementally pushing the series forward, further than it's ever been in fact, but ultimately it didn't really work for me because of how stuck in the past the whole presentation thing was. Many of the critics out there seem to agree. Though for the diehard fans sold on the Pokemon fantasy, these baby steps were enough to impress. On OpenCritic is sitting at a strong 81, GameSpot gave it 7 out of 10 and said, quote, like Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, it takes some surprising risks, but it looks rough doing so. Game Freak's decision to overhaul the battle mechanics for the first time since Pokemon's inception is admirable, and it ultimately paid off, but after 5 3D Pokemon games, it's surprising how far behind Pokemon is when it comes to its presentation. It feels like the last piece missing to really bring Pokemon into the future, end quote. Couldn't have said it better myself. Double Fine's Keeper also snuck in last week. I myself had a really nice time with this one, and you can watch my review on the channel right now. Critics either love this thing or just thought it was okay, it seems. Currently sits at a strong 81 on OpenCritic. IGN was on the love side of the scale with a 9 out of 10 score, saying, quote, Keeper is a stunning puzzle game that carefully balances its moorish mechanics with a heartfelt story. Its levels are teeming with life to interact with and interesting objects to ogle, with each scene framed by a percussive driving score. Adorable in premise, Keeper is a psychedelic exploration of life packed into a brief runtime that's well worth experiencing at least once in your life, end quote. From a couple of strong bets to a much riskier one, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 has perhaps met the worst of our fears, landing at a weak 64 on OpenCritic, with the consensus being that the project that's been kicked around to different developers for years has a pretty strong story and characters, but struggles as an actual video game. Eurogamer was on the lower end of the spectrum for this one, scoring at 2 out of 5 stars. They said, quote, the Chinese room has managed to make something from a box of inherited parts, but this action RPG feels hollow and functional, and is only redeemed by some stellar performances from the characters and cast, end quote. Ninja Gaiden 4 could have also arguably been a risky bet for some, as Platinum Games seem to have been handed the reins to this series continuation while Team Ninja work on Neo 3. It's landed at a strong 81 on OpenCritic, with plenty of critics enjoying it, but not without a few rough spots. Shack News landed at a score of 8 out of 10, saying, quote, it's not a perfect game, but Ninja Gaiden 4 hits a lot of the notes that count and ties a fine ribbon on the whole thing by the end. I wouldn't mind playing this new protagonist Yakumo in a few more games, but if this is the curtain call on this arc of Ninja Gaiden, it's a good one, end quote. Jurassic World Evolution 3 dropped this week and it's sitting at a mighty 84 on OpenCritic. Damn, that is a good score actually. IGN scored at 8 out of 10, saying, quote, Jurassic World Evolution 3 builds on the series' already satisfying formula to offer a new story, smart updates, loads of dinosaurs, and hours of management sim zen, end quote. On Steam, it's sitting at 91% very positive, so Frontier clearly have a winner on their hands. Another Safe as Houses release was Power Wash Simulator 2. Would you like to continue your epic cleaning saga, only now with new locations, new kit, and split-screen co-op? Well, a future lab made just the game for you. Power Wash Simulator 2 is sitting at a strong 81 on OpenCritic, with critics noting that it isn't shaking up the formula all that much, but that's okay because how much better could power washing get? Here's Eurogamer, who scored it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, Power Wash Simulator 2 opts for welcome refinements over big advancements, but it's as weirdly compelling and winningly daft as ever, end quote. And finally, a bunch of people who used to work together at Telltale got together to form a new studio, and their first game just released. It's called Dispatch, and while only the first 2 episodes are out now, the reception has been really positive, or more specifically, very positive, 87% on Steam. Steam user The Prophecy had this to say about it, quote, "I never leave reviews for games, but I felt compelled for this one. Dispatch is one of the most beautifully written and voice-acted games I've ever played, also an extremely unique experience. I hesitate to call it a game. While it does have an element of gaming, This Is the Police comes to mind, it's also very much an episodic series a la Invincible. Part game, part show, not entirely either, but so damn good," end quote. Austin has also reviewed this one for us, and that'll go up on the channel very soon, but TLDR, he really liked it, and he's keen to play the remaining episodes when they drop over the next couple of weeks. Love to see it, to be honest, since the Telltale game really needs to continue to exist in some form or another, so I'm glad this team is keeping it alive. So what's coming out this week? Well, we're doing a bit of a reset on our timeline since the show is going to be coming out on Friday a bit more consistently from now on. Though, of course, knowing this show, we're still going to narrowly miss out on the biggest news of the week more often than not, so that's not going to change. So a quick mention of Once Upon a Katamari, which comes out on all platforms today, October 24th, before we roll out the carpet to everything coming out up to next Thursday. Jumping over to Monday, October 27th, we're kicking off the week with Escape Simulator 2, the sequel to Escape Simulator, which really was quite well loved for how well it translated real-world spatial puzzling into the digital world. Perhaps we have COVID to thank for this one, as well as Escape Academy, which followed not long after. Developer Pine Studios say that's going to continue supporting the original game, however, with Escape Simulator 2's big new thing being better visual rendering for better vibes and physics-based interactions to emphasize the tangibility of these spaces, along with a more powerful map editor to take advantage of it all. Checking in now with Monkey Island creator Ron Gilbert. He's about to release a new game on Tuesday, October 28th for PC. After putting out the excellent Return to Monkey Island a few years ago with Devolver, he's shifting genres to release a roguelike action RPG called Death by Scrolling, where the shtick is that the world keeps scrolling upwards. This isn't his first foray into ARPG territory. He released Death Spank and its sequel about 15 years ago now, which are actually pretty good, so looking forward to seeing what the vibe is here. Seems like there's a notable game every day this week, because on Wednesday, October 29th, Obsidian is releasing The Outer Worlds 2, and no, we are not taking into account the paid advanced early access stuff, because that shit needs to go away. This one is out on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. It's decidedly not $80 US, and by the reviews that released this week, it's meant to be pretty solid, though still held back by many of the things that held back the first game. I'm planning to jump into it this weekend, so do expect my review hopefully before the end of the month. All right, moving on to another big Thursday for October. The real big one, of course, is Arc Raiders, the extraction shooter from Embark Studios, the studio responsible for the finals, made up of former DICE developers. This one has been a long time coming. It was originally announced as a co-op shooter before the team pivoted to an extraction shooter format, and not just any extraction shooter, the hot new extraction shooter, if the playtest and more recent Service Slam were any indication. Basically everything Marathon wishes it was right now. The Service Slam just passed hit almost 190,000 concurrent players on Steam, so no doubt Embark are expecting this one to pop off next Thursday, much in the same way that Battlefield did. By the way, if you're interested to learn more about this one, I sat down with the game's executive producer for a wide-ranging interview that covered everything from long-term live service ambitions to Marathon and what Embark learned from its reception. If you want to check that out, it's part of the Friends Per Second podcast, and that episode will be live on the channel this weekend, so be sure to subscribe and ding that notification bell so you won't miss it. Trio of Japanese games now. The first is the most well-known quantity, Dragon's Quest 1+2 HD 2D remake, which comes out on all platforms. Square Enix did a bang-up job with its Dragon Quest 3 remake last year, which is one of the most beloved RPGs in Japan, hands down, so they're reviving the beginning of that saga this year, and chances are it's going to sell gangbusters. The next game is Mojogami, which is a new side-scrolling action platformer from Inti Creates, a studio that's been around for quite some time, started by former Capcom developers with a soft specialization in the genre. Really interesting papercraft art direction with this one that definitely sets it apart, with plenty of anime stuff in there as well, if that's your speed. Next one is a new title from a cult favorite Japanese indie outfit called Onion Games, whose director was one of the people responsible for designing a weird little game called Moon Remix RPG Adventure, famous for being one of the main influences for Undertale. After a few forays into different genres, Onion has gone back to RPGs, apparently with the encouragement of Undertale's Toby Fox, with this new one being called Stray Children. It takes place in a world where all the adults have become monsters and children need to fight to survive. Definitely has a weird edge to it, and yes, you can talk your way out of turn-based battles. Two games for fighting game fans to round out next Thursday, both of them revitalizations of older titles. First up, we've got Virtual Fighter 5 Revo World Stage. This one takes the 20-year-old game and overhauls the visuals, adds modern netcode, crossplay, and a new single-player mode. And it's out on PS5 and Xbox, along with a free update to the bare-bones PC version of it that came out earlier this year. The second fighting game is the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which is the latest in Digital Eclipse's interactive documentary series, collecting several of the original games in this series, along with new interviews with the development team and archival material, put together in order to tell the story of the franchise that was a big part of America getting up in arms about violent video games. These Digital Eclipse collections are always so good, so full of information, so you're sure to learn tons. Even if you know a lot about these sort of games, definitely worth checking it out. It's headed to all platforms. All right, so for this next one, I know it can be easy to get sucked in by a cool aesthetic, but man, when a game has art direction this strong, it's hard not to. So put this on your radar. This is Unbeatable. It's a game where, quote, music is illegal and you do crimes, end quote. What this means is that it's a hybrid rhythm action and adventure game where you play a bunch of delinquents who are on a journey of self-discovery, doing quests, playing a bunch of minigames, which all lead up to big rhythm game set pieces where you also punch cops because, as we said, music is illegal. If you're not so down with the whole story angle of it, you can play it as a straight, serious rhythm action arcade game too, and just tackle the whole track list without all the fluff. The rhythm mechanics only require 2 buttons, but they're utilized in a surprising number of ways with some serious challenge here if you consider yourself a bit of a savant. But the biggest draw, of course, is the soundtrack, which is a killer 2000s J-rock style thing, and the gritty VHS anime aesthetic and animations are all absolutely superb. I mean, just look at this thing. There's a very good free demo available right now on Steam, and it comes out on Thursday, November 6th for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. If you like the look of it, we've left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Our focus story of the week is yet another mod from Red Dead modder Blurbs. You might remember him as the guy who made that mod that put him in the middle of Red Dead and he could like push people over with his actual IRL hands. Anyway, he's back at it, and this time he's turned Red Dead into a fighting game complete with some nice finishing touches. Take a look.
He's gonna get what he deserves.
Finish him. Come on.
This is it. Arthur, this is your time. Rewrite history. Left, right, down. Please, please. Yes! We did it! New ending!
Fatality.
Alternate ending unlocked!
All right, I'm going to try to pull myself away from Ball X Pit long enough to review Outer Worlds 2 now, so wish me luck. As for all you out there, I hope you get some time to play some great games this weekend. You made the time to watch this video, and we appreciate that a lot. But you know what we'd appreciate even more? Smacking that like button like it's going out of style. Be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell so you'll know the next time we upload. Plenty of content coming this week. And don't forget to sign up over at thisweekinvideogames.com for daily ad-free news coverage and in-depth previews, features, and op-eds. It is the last month that Founders Edition membership is going to be available, so grab it before it's gone forever in order to lock in your subscription price forever. And with that, ladies and gents, I'm out of here. Have a great weekend. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.